Your kingdom come, this city is yours. We're waiting on you.
Hi everyone. Well, as Tim said last week, we're going to do these little short videos, 2 to 3 minutes, for our extra study as we look at being anxious about the future. How do we combat the kind of raised anxiety that perhaps nearly all of us feel in some shape or form at the moment? And one of the passages that we didn't look at on Sunday, but that it might be worth you turning to in the New Testament, is Luke 12, where Jesus says in verse 22, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens, they do not sow or reap, they have no storeroom or barn, and yet God feeds them." And I guess in that very simple illustration, he sort of says, in a way, they haven't got control over things. They've not got a strategy for storage or where their food's going to come from. And yet God, day by day by day, gives food to them. Jesus' observation from the natural world there, I think, can really perhaps help us a little bit with, just our anxieties, that we may not have a strategy. We probably haven't got a plan in the way that perhaps normally we would have at this point. We may not have a financial recovery plan or a recovering from the trauma of homeschooling plan. We may not have the kind of plans in place that we might normally have. And yet our Father feeds us, and yet He's got us. He will provide for us. He will sustain us. And Jesus says, don't worry. He says, you're not going to add an hour to your life. And we know that most of the things we worry about, they say 75% of the things we worry about never happen. But I didn't include that on Sunday because at the moment, let's be honest, a lot of things that we perhaps have been worried about have sort of happened in different ways. So I think perhaps we're looking at it from a slightly different perspective, in that some really bad news is around, but God is still God, and He still has got those storehouses, those strategies, those plans for us that we can't. And I really love His words at the end. There's so much compassion when He says, "Do not be afraid, little flock." I love that. There's such tenderness in it. Your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. In other words, there is a part of this that even disaster can't touch. That actually, as we feel fearful, we suddenly are reminded again that we live for another world, that we live for an unseen kingdom. And that even in this, the church is growing. Even in this, people, as we know, are turning to prayer. Even in the turmoil of what we've lived through over the last sort of 10 or so weeks and more, there is still some beautiful provisions of God within it. In other words, don't be afraid, little flock, because I'm building my kingdom. I'm doing something that perhaps we can't yet see. And I wonder if we will look back on this time and think, well, there was loss, but there was some really, really incredible gains as well. Things that we discovered, things that we found, maybe a way that church was renewed in a different way. And I wanted to just finish by that reminder from Jesus as well, to live in each day, because tomorrow has enough cares of its own. We know about mindfulness. We know that that's a very popular teaching now with mental health practitioners, but actually we know it roots way, way back, as often is the way with the Bible, that it got there first, with mindfulness, living in the day. And I think more and more we have to do that as a discipline, to say, God, every single day we have is a gift. And yes, we may be anxious about the future, but we choose to live in today, because tomorrow does have enough cares of its own. I hope that that's something just to chew on afresh as you gather together in whatever way that is, or you study on your own today. And let's not be anxious without help. Let's not be anxious without courage. And let's give our worries afresh to the living God as our prayers reach him and his compassionate heart today. Do not be afraid, little flock.